Screams echoed through the cold metal hallways of Rikers Island that night. Guards were running, alarms were blaring, and inmates were banging on their cell doors, shouting, "They did it! They really did it!" In the middle of cell block D, the lights flickered as two of the most feared prisoners in the jail's history, Marcus Mad Dog Kane and Jerome Bones Carter, stood over a fallen officer. His keys dangled from their hands. Marcus turned to Jerome with a grin that sent chills down everyone's spine. "Tonight," he whispered, "Rikers belongs to us." Then the power went out completely. The darkness swallowed everything. And then someone screamed again. But this time, it wasn't an officer. That was the night everything changed inside Rikers Island. But to understand how it got to that point, you have to go back. Back to when Marcus and Jerome first met inside the jail that was already known as one of America's toughest and most dangerous. It all started on a hot August afternoon when a bus full of new inmates rolled through the steel gates of Rikers Island. Among them was Marcus Kane, a tall, muscular man with a scar running down his left cheek, a scar he got from a knife fight back in Brooklyn. Marcus wasn't just any inmate. He had a reputation that traveled ahead of him. Rumor had it, he once took on 3 men in a holding cell and walked out without a scratch. Everyone called him Mad Dog because when he snapped, there was no stopping him. That same week, another man was brought in, Jerome Carter, a thin but cold-eyed figure known for his eerie silence. People called him Bones because he never raised his voice, but when he did speak, people listened. Jerome was serving time for armed robbery, but it wasn't his crime that made him feared. It was his brain. He could plan things with scary precision. At first, the two barely spoke. Marcus was loud, reckless, and loved to pick fights in the yard. Jerome stayed in the corner, watching everything. But one afternoon, Marcus got into a brawl with another inmate, Big T, a massive man from Queens who ruled the cell block. The fight drew everyone's attention. Guards were shouting, inmates were cheering, and punches flew like bullets. Just when it looked like Marcus would lose, Jerome stepped in. He didn't throw a punch. He just said, "Enough." The entire room froze. Even Big T stopped mid-swing. Nobody knew why, but the fight ended right there. From that moment, Marcus and Jerome became a team, a dangerous mix of muscle and mind. Weeks passed, and strange things started happening. Guards' radios went missing. Cameras stopped working for minutes at a time. Food delivery trucks came late. Nobody could prove it, but everyone knew Marcus and Jerome were behind it. Together, they started controlling other inmates quietly, promising protection for loyalty and punishment for betrayal. By the time the warden realized what was happening, it was already too late. The two men weren't just feared anymore. They were legends inside Rikers Island. But one night, something went wrong. A guard found a hidden tunnel behind the laundry room, one that led under the prison wall. The alarm blared through the night. The search began. Marcus and Jerome were cornered in cell block D. As the guards surrounded the hallway, Marcus grinned. "Looks like it's showtime," he said. Jerome just nodded once. Then suddenly the lights went out, and that's when the screams began again. When the lights went out inside Rikers Island, everything fell into chaos. Guards shouted orders that no one could hear over the blaring alarms. Inmates pounded their cell doors, yelling, cheering, some praying. The emergency lights flickered red, bathing the cell block in an eerie glow that made every shadow look alive. Through that dim light, Marcus Mad Dog Kane and Jerome Bones Carter moved like ghosts. They weren't panicking. They were calm, almost too calm. Marcus had the guard's keys in his hand, and Jerome carried a folded map he had drawn from memory. It wasn't just any map. It showed every blind spot in the security cameras, every shortcut, every timing gap. "This is it," Jerome whispered. "We move now or never." Marcus smirked, his scar catching the red light. "Then let's make history." They slipped through the first gate and disappeared into the lower hallway while chaos raged above. A few inmates saw them and began whispering their names. "Mad Dog and Bones, they're breaking out." Soon the rumor spread like wildfire. Fights broke out in other blocks as everyone tried to distract the guards, hoping maybe they'd get a chance too. Meanwhile, down below, Marcus and Jerome crept through the old laundry tunnels. The air smelled of rust and damp concrete. Jerome counted steps softly under his breath. 3 turns, then left. They reached a heavy door. Marcus pushed it, but it didn't budge. He kicked it once. Nothing. Twice. Still nothing. On the third kick, it swung open, revealing a small maintenance passage. But just as they stepped through, a flashlight beam cut across the tunnel. "Stop right there," a voice yelled. 2 guards had found them. Marcus didn't hesitate. He lunged, tackling one to the ground. Jerome moved quick, swinging a metal pipe from the floor. A shout, a struggle, then silence. Both guards lay unconscious. Marcus looked at. The tunnel was narrow, damp, and smelled like mold and sea salt. Water dripped from the ceiling, echoing softly in the darkness as Marcus and Jerome crawled through it. Every scrape of their knees against the metal floor sounded too loud. Behind them, faint sirens wailed, the sound of chaos still raging inside Rikers Island. Jerome checked his wristwatch, even though the glow was faint. "We have 6 minutes before they realize where this tunnel leads," he whispered. Marcus grunted. "Then let's move." For a while, all they could hear was the sound of their breathing and the tunnel creaking under their weight. Then suddenly, the ground beneath Marcus's hand gave way. He froze. Wait! Before he could finish, the metal panel snapped open, and Marcus dropped down into darkness with a loud splash. Water surged around him. Jerome peered through the hole and saw Marcus thrashing in waist-deep water. "You good?" Jerome hissed. Marcus coughed. "Yeah, but we're not alone." A flashlight beam flickered from the far end of the drain. Voices followed. Deep, angry voices. It wasn't the guards this time. It was other inmates. 3 of them. Somehow, they had found the tunnel too. One of them, a heavy-set man with tattoos across his chest, grinned when he saw Marcus. Well, look who thinks he's special," the man said. "Mad Dog Kane. Heard you were planning something big. Didn't think you'd invite us." Jerome dropped down beside Marcus, landing quietly. He recognized the man. Rico the Butcher Alvarez, one of the most violent inmates ever locked up on Rikers. Rico was the kind of man who smiled before doing something awful. Marcus squared his shoulders. "This isn't your ride, Rico. Go back." Rico laughed. "You don't own this tunnel, dog. And I ain't letting 2 legends walk free while I rot in there." The tension in the air was thick. The tunnel was too small for it. The next morning, the warden stood by the waterline, watching as rescue boats searched the river. No bodies were found. Only the legend of 2 men, the most feared prisoners in Rikers Island history, who vanished into the darkness and were never seen again. Or so everyone thought. Because 2 weeks later, in a small diner in Queens, a security camera caught a glimpse of 2 men eating breakfast quietly in the corner. One had a scar on his cheek, the other never looked up from his plate, and just before they left, the one called Bones smiled and said, "Told you we'd make history."